I'm an author and a columnist. For nearly a decade, I've written articles for newspapers and magazines. I've been on radio shows. I've been on podcasts. I have 4 books to my name. I write and talk about relationships. I've pushed norms, I've questioned, and I've earned a reputation for being a protagonist. I've been called a bitter old woman. Imagine a sweet young thing like me. I've been damned to hell by men of God and everything in between. You see, being outspoken, a woman, an African woman, a divorced African woman, is not a good combination. People would rather I use my voice to portray myself as a victim, a term that I detest. Not because I've not been hurt, but because I'd rather spend my energy trying to figure out how I got here, and if indeed it's the work of the devil or my village people. When I told my friends and family that I was going to be on Engage, and that the theme was, what's love got to do with it? People assumed that I'd finally talk about my ex, give him the dressing down he deserves, Kendrick Lamar style. Or maybe I'd be talking about my new love, who makes my toes curl and the hairs on my back stand. There was even a poll at my local. People, there was one function that wanted to know, are you finally telling us the gory details? The truth of the matter is, my divorce is very boring. My divorce is not my love story. It's a small part of my story. My love story is between me and my ancestral mothers. Do daughters repeat their mother's love karma? I got into marriage very clear that I was not my mother or my grandmother. I was not the one of the two. In fact, I was so determined not to be like them that I think I fast-forwarded parts of my life. For starters, by 22, I had a husband, a house, a baby, a maid, and a white chicken called Lucy. When my friends were at Carnival for rock night, I was rocking my baby to sleep. My children came in fast and furious. By the time I was 30, 31, I had given birth to 5 children, 4 living. And also, my marriage was over. I know I was there in the marriage, but until a few days ago, when I was preparing for this talk, I couldn't tell you what went wrong. There was infidelity on his part, but remember, I'm not a victim. I don't play supportive roles. I'm a co-star. So I've spent the last 15 years of my life after my marriage trying to figure out my role in that failed union. I almost fell into the trap of fighting for my marriage because I was told things like, you're going to leave him for her so easily. You're home, there's a curse of broken marriages, you need to pray. And the classic was, where will you go with all your children? Who is going to love you? But I remembered I was loved at home. I'm not desperate for love. And also, I was not going to be my mother or my grandmother. Do daughters repeat their mother's love karma? My grandmother, Felgona Oyuga, didn't have a good marriage, whatever angle you choose to look at it from. She was married in her teens to a man who wasn't so good. She experienced domestic violence. And yet, in all this, she chose to express love for her daughter, my mother, by taking her to school because she thought, had she had a better education, maybe her marriage would be better. And so when she was told things like, don't educate a girl, it's a waste, she'll probably get pregnant, or she'll take that education and take it to her husband's home, she chose to take her daughter to the best school, Highland School, now Moy Girls Eldoret. She opened a savings account, I think then it was Poster, savings account for my mother, and told her best option was to have her own money, even if it was just 50 shillings. My grandmother never left her marriage. She stayed, she prayed, she raised the rest of her children, she worked hard. She was a devout Christian who believed that suffering there were trials to test her faith in God. Do daughters repeat their mother's love karma? My mother, Maria Adhiambo, was a good woman. I'm sure you can tell by now I'm not a good woman. She was beautiful. She had this long black hair that she loved to comb. She had this small waist like a wasp and hips for days. And she loved to laugh. When my mom laughed, you laughed with her. And oh, she loved my dad. I can swear on the love my mother had for my father. My father was tall, dark, and handsome. Now you know where I get my height from. He had this mischievous grin. He was intelligent, brilliant mind in the law profession. My mother was homely. She was a homemaker. She went to church. She was a dutiful daughter. She made the best chapatis. She was a teacher. You know, wife material by meters. My father, well, women loved my father. And sometimes he loved them back. It's not easy to say bad things about your parents. But the truth of the matter is, as much as my father was a good father, a good man, he wasn't husband material. My mother was not happy in her marriage. There was no domestic violence in our home. So her mother told her to pray. Her marriage was not as bad, she was told. My mother's love language was teaching. By the time I was in class 3, I was prepared for all the changes that would happen in my body. By the time I was 13, I knew everything there was to know about sex, and my mother was a teacher, so I had gory details and illustrations. As I grew older, there were many life lessons and skills to be taught. My mother always insisted that it was not fashionable not to know how to cook or keep a home. I hated everything domestic. She was always screaming, "Don't be a stupid woman. If you're stupid, your children will be stupid, and people will say you're stupid like your mother, and I'm not stupid." She roped me in on all her side gigs. She taught me how to make money. On her dying bed, my mother insisted that I must learn to buy expensive and nice things for myself without feeling guilty. If you're a woman and a mom, you know how that guilt really plays. I guess that was her way of teaching me self-love. Do daughters repeat their mother's love karma? Remember me? Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Felgona Oyuga. I am Maria Adhiambo's daughter. I am Felgona Oyuga's granddaughter. I met the father of my children along Gong Road at KRU grounds. He'd just come off the pitch. He was still in his rugby kit. We were probably 19 or 20. I liked the idea of having a boyfriend who played rugby. It was the shots. It was those small shots. Don't judge me. I was only 20. We were inseparable after that. By 22, I was pregnant out of wedlock. And I decided right then and then that I would right my wrongs. This was not part of the script. And so we decided that we would get married. 2 young kids who thought marriage was this long, endless sleepover with as much sex as we wanted. I told my father I was getting married, and he was furious. He was opposed to the idea. We had heated arguments. He said, "I know," he used to call me Mama. He said, "Mama, I know you have a baby. Even if you had a baby, a crocodile, and a hyena, you can't get married now. Take your time, and not to this man." I couldn't understand how he decided he had the right to tell me what type of man to marry, given his track record. I'm not judging. I loved my father. He was my world. I'm a daddy's girl. But remember, I had made my mother a victim in her marriage. And in that victimhood, my father was the villain. So I decided I was marrying somebody who was the complete opposite of my father. So we got married. From the beginning of that marriage, it was a protest ground. Mandamano. I'm not the throwing stone types. I was not going to be my mother who loved unconditionally. I was not going to be my grandmother who endured. I was a good wife, I thought. I was dutiful, I was faithful, I was loyal, I cooked, I ironed, I never had a headache. But then I just discovered that I was not vulnerable. Without vulnerability, there's no connection. I was hypersensitive to any signs that would make me a victim in this marriage, like my mother and my grandmother. And I found them. Yes, them. My co-pond mates. People think because I don't talk about my marriage that I must have left because of something frivolous. Betrayal is not easy. It's not fun. There's a madness, an insanity, a helplessness that comes with it. I don't even think I have the vocabulary yet to explain it. I had sacrificed to be a good wife. I had denied parts of myself. I had gone against my father. And now, with egg on my face, my father was not even in this world, for me to go back and say, Daddy, it didn't work, what do I do? Leaving my marriage was an act of self-love on my part. I needed to find myself. Do daughters repeat their mother's love karma? I learned to accept my mother and my grandmother. They were not victims. Those were tough women who chose their lives. And in choosing their lives, they gave me lessons that have brought me to this day. I'm here because of those women. I'm their wildest dream. I am my grandmother. I am dutiful, I'm hardworking, and I don't listen to pedestrian opinions on how to raise my children. I am my mother. I'm a lover girl. I love hard. And in the right circumstances, I'll cook clean, I'll even bake you a chocolate cake. I'm also my father. I push, I question, I do scary things. I love Roomba. I'm naughty and I'm nice. But I'm also myself. I will leave. I'm a leaver. If you don't treat me right, if the conditions are not correct, I will move for myself. For me, that's self-love. Self-love is accepting yourself and trusting that when you appear as you are, with 10,000 ancestors in your DNA, that you'll be okay. Self-love, I believe, is liberating the you in your children. I imagine my ancestral mothers, to the beginning of our family, liberated their daughters with lessons. And so that's what I'm doing now. I'm liberating my children, the me in my children. Self-love is non-judgmental. By judging my mothers, I judged myself. It was arrogant of me to deem them weak. Do daughters repeat their mother's love karma? No, they don't. Mothers live their lives the best way they know how to. They teach their daughters lessons to make their lives better. Daughters watch their mothers living their lives and learn from those lessons, even if it takes them 15 years. Thank you. Thank you.